have, at long last, arrived in Essaouira. If Marrakesh is a fever dream, this is the cool cloth placed upon your forehead by a nurse who finds your delirium slightly inconvenient. The locals call it Essaouira, the well-designed, a name that drips with a delightful sort of bureaucratic irony. You see, these wonderfully rational geometric streets didn't spring from a sense of zen, but from the mind of a French architect named Cornut. He was hired by a sultan who possessed the particular kind of vision usually reserved for people who enjoy reorganizing other people's sock drawers. The goal? To tax rebellious merchants with greater mathematical precision. It is a masterpiece of colonial urban planning, disguised as a whitewashed sanctuary. A fortress built to ensure that no coin could leave the harbor without being properly introduced to the Sultan's treasury. Here in the harbor, the Atlantic wind, the Alizé, scours the air clean of everything except the pungent, honest smell of 1,000 disgruntled sardines. This was once the Port of Timbuktu, the cosmopolitan funnel for gold, ostrich feathers, and the precious purple dye extracted from the murex snails on the islands yonder. The same dye that allowed Roman senators to look impressively expensive while doing very little. Today, the commodities are slightly less imperial: sardines, seagulls, and the distinct sensation that time has decided to take a nap and has left instructions not to be woken for anything short of a total eclipse. Looking out across the fleet, it seems the 18th century simply forgot to leave. The harbor is a forest of heavy, cobalt blue wooden trawlers, hand-built with a stubborn defiance of fiberglass and modern haste. They sit low in the salt-heavy water, looking less like commercial vessels and more like ancient relics waiting for a command from a long-dead sultan. One gets the feeling the entire city is slowly being reclaimed by the Atlantic, one grain of sand at a time, and the buildings have simply accepted their fate with a shrug. The air here is thick with the peppery, cedar-like scent of thuya wood shavings drifting from the carpentry shops. It is the smell of a very expensive Victorian library being slowly dismantled by a man in a jalaba. It is a sensory map of a city that refuses to be hurried. And everywhere there are cats. They sit with a terrifying level of self-assurance, fed by butchers and bakers alike to ward off the jinn, spirits that might otherwise sneak through these rational alleyways. One suspects the cats find the jinn beneath their notice, but they accept the sardines as a formal retainer for their services. But there is something else here. A hum. They say Essaouira is the spiritual aorta of the Nawa, the rhythm of the Sahel dragged across the desert until it became something bone-deep and indestructible. I had been told that if you listen past the wind, you can hear the thrum, the metallic clack of castanets waiting to be played. I found myself wondering if the city would actually reveal its heartbeat to a casual observer, or if it was just another story sold to the tourists alongside the polyester rugs and the dubious, ancient coins. That answer came sooner than expected. My first night, deep in the Medina. We were settling in for a quiet dinner, engaging in the local sport of attempting to consume our body weight in tagine. And then, the walls dissolved. But the music did not stop at the dinner table. It turns out the entire city is merely a resonance chamber for these sounds. I quickly realized that the true magic of Essaouira isn't just the geometry or the history, but this. Watching the sunset bleed into the Atlantic, while the air vibrates with the songs of a dozen different cultures clashing and harmonizing, in a way that would make a French architect weep with confusion. It wasn't a performance, it was an eruption of joy. We were ambushed by the rhythm,